Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Return to the Realm, a rereaders podcast for the Realm of the Elderlings series. Just to be sure, because this is a rereaders podcast, we are going to be having spoilers for all 16 books in the Realm of the Elderlings series. So if you've only read Assassin's Apprentice so far, or only read the first trilogy, make sure to read up on the rest of the books and then come back and watch us.
Yeah, no
And yeah,
books are
today
safe.
no books are safe. And yeah, so today we're going to be finishing up Assassin's Apprentice with chapters 20 through 24. Ooh, I can't believe we're getting to finish an actual, it seems so wild to me that to go from, pitching the idea of, hey, would anyone like to do a podcast? And now we're, one book through. Which obviously
Finishing the book.
we just mentioned it, which is, whatever. But, it's a milestone. So I'm like, well, let's go, us.
I was sad thinking about finishing the book today, and then I'm like, well, we have 15 left, so I guess it's fine. I don't have to be that sad just yet.
And the next one has Night Eyes.
I know, I'm so excited. He's my favorite.
We get the little cameo here at the end of Night Eyes.
Yes.
Yes, oh my god, I'm so excited for Night Eyes, but then I'm dreading Tawny Man because I don't want to go through that
Spoilers! Night Eyes dies.
Don't get too attached to Night Eyes. Ha 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 ha. Just like one of those really obnoxious
You can't get
people who
attached to any of the
I'm not
animals.
spoiling, I'm just saying don't get too attached. Okay, yeah, so the first chapter in this section introduces us to the setting of the climax of the book, which is Jhaampe. So Jhaampe is sort of the capital city of the Mountain Kingdom, and this chapter kind of chronicles the arrival of the the Buckkeep royal family party to Jhaampe, and we see a lot of the beauty of the city and kind of how it differs from the cultural elements of Buckkeep, but also there's definitely some tension there because Fitz is noticing some things that the rest of the royal family, particularly August, are distinctly missing out on, and is feeling like that might cause political tension or issues in communication later on.
I was wondering about this because there's so many times that Fitz, as this is all happening, is why would Regal not tell us about this custom? We seem stupid or we seem weak. This is a cultural divide that's going to make us look bad. And I was wondering if Regal purposely did that, but at the same time, he wanted to marry Kettrigan himself, so wouldn't he want to make himself look good?
He could have just been doing it out of ignorance. He just
Yeah,
and
I think
it
he's
could
just
be one of those things where he thinks his culture is the better one, the superior one, so he doesn't feel like he needs to learn her customs. She needs to just learn his.
I think
It's
it's
also
more of
because I don't think he has a very high opinion of August, and he's whatever, I'm making a good impression, fuck all of those other people, without realizing
Yeah.
that here they're seen as a cohort.
A whole.
right.
But yeah, speaking of which, I was cringing so hard at August. And the thing is, I get we're supposed to feel that he's an arrogant royal, but I'm we know that he had a formal education in etiquette and diplomacy. He's acting as an envoy of the kingdom. It just feels like he should know better. And it feels so
Definitely
galling.
should.
It's Fitz doesn't have that education, but he would have handled that shit way better.
I think it's just she's trying to tie August to Regal and have them kind of have similar things. Because I feel like August definitely should have known a little bit better, or he should have been at least told some things right before he left so that he knew about the customs or what he should do that's polite and all that.
Yeah, Regal's the big boss, and August is a high-level minion.
Hmm.
See, August doesn't even realize is the thing. It's
Yeah.
Right.
August is I think August is yeah, Galen's cool. And Galen's cool with Regal, so I guess Regal's cool. And then just it has such a
Spiral.
high self-importance because of being a royal plus all of Galen's training. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with a comment that Leah made here, where the descriptions of Jhaampe are so beautiful. It's like I love it, like especially like how they describe the colors, like mountain tulips of all the tents and stuff. It gives me like this
Mhm.
feeling of like a campground on like a huge unprecedented scale, but like yeah, it's like a giant campground, but with like gardens and like water sources interspersed. It really just
Yeah, the
sounds like really
only
beautiful.
permanent things are nature and
Yeah,
the
it
Mhm.
kind of
like
it kind of reminded me of Lothlorien from Lord of the Rings, but like not sad. 'Cause
Mhm.
Lothlorien kind of has like a somber edge to it, and Jhaampe is more like colorful and bright and like I don't know. If I had to live anywhere in these books, I'd probably live in Jhaampe, even though I hate winter, because I feel like if I lived anywhere else, I would die.
Pretty much.
I think I'd want to live in Bingtown probably.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one too, but only as a trader.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, Bingtown definitely has its issues, and it seems like Jhampé is as close to like an ideal place in these series. Like they talk about how like everyone follows etiquette. It reminded me a lot of like um kind of the cultural norms around cleanliness in like Japan and other like adjacent Asian
Yeah.
cultures, where like not like the other cultural elements don't track from that, but like the way they described like, hey, everyone is committed to keeping this place clean and free of like any sort of like trash or littering. It gave me that same like collective responsibility vibe, and I really vibe with that.
They all live pretty selflessly and I think they care for others before they care for themselves, and that's kind of the main motivation for keeping everything nice and clean and hospitable because they're thinking, "Well, I wouldn't want someone else to have to live in trash like this." They're not thinking, "Well, it's not my problem. It's not my trash,"
Mhm.
like some
And
people
I
do.
love that as like a presentation of a culture built on survival, because I feel like so often you have like harsh mountain culture is like real assholes and real self-interested is kind of the norm. But here the idea of like cooperation and like yeah, essentially just like caring for the whole because that's what lifts everyone upwards is such like a really cool take on this idea of like a survival culture, especially given
Mhm.
like all of like the kind of horror stories we have set up as Fitz is arriving to Jhampé about how like they throw their young out into the cold, the old people run off into the thing, but it's just like no, yeah, like they're harsh, but they're also like they're harsh when in the situations they have to be, and in all other things they strive for kindness. Yeah.
Probably because they live shorter lives there because it's cold and it's harsh, so they wanna be nice to everyone while they still have them.
Hmm.
Yep.
And also like it probably pays to be kind when like because they describe Jean as like since there's so many tents and stuff, it's like it's a very transient place. So like by having these norms of like being kind to other people, it makes it just easier to coexist and trust the people around you rather than having to always be like, oh, new place, scary.
Mhm.
And also, like, with them moving and not settling, like, I'm sure when they're on the road or whatever, like, you don't ever feel safe because of predators or bandits or other people or whatever. So it's nice that they can have this one, like, central place where when they do decide to settle for a period of time, they can actually feel safe there because everybody's like respecting the boundaries that they've set or the rules.
And I don't even think they're laws really, I think it's
Oh,
just,
like
like, the
a
societal norms, and that's it.
hmm
Mhm. Because again, like the royal family doesn't seem have to have like the power to enforce anything other than like they don't have like a standing army per se. They have guards, but like they don't have like these methods of enforcement that we usually associate with like a ruling government. They just have
Mhm.
respect. Mhm. Um, Oh yeah, a point that you dropped here talking about the royal family is like the idea of like the concept of a sacrifice kind of being tied to like this Judeo-Christian thing of like the Jesus or like the savior motif, and I think it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting. I never
I
like
had never
in
really
that
thought of that
context.
until this, and I was like, they're calling them the sacrifice. Like, hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, and like in the way they like describe it as like kind of like the one for all, giving yourself for the people. There's definitely like obviously there's like lots of like media and literature that like has that, but that I feel like Jesus is the biggest one. So yeah,
Mhm.
even if like there's not a specific Jesus figure, I wonder if like that could have been, yeah, like you said, the inspiration for the sacrifice.
We see that later in not this specifically, but like a biblical comparison. I got that a lot when I was reading Live Ships and the Religion of Sa, or I think that's how you'd say it, Sa.
Yeah.
It reminded me a lot of like when Wintra wants to be a priest, it's like comparable to a monk in
Hmm.
Christianity. So there could be like, there's a couple different ways that I think you could tie like certain religions in with. Like, I'm sure she had took inspiration, like whenever you're trying to craft a whole new world and a whole new
Yeah. It's
culture
hard
and
to start from nothing.
right, yeah, you're influenced by like the exposure you get around you. I
Mhm.
was just looking at the note stock, and I saw this line from Alex that made me laugh. Regal is such a fuck. I hate.
He is. I hate him so much.
I do too. It just made me laugh because
Eternal mood.
that's
Just like ah.
He's the frickin' worst.
he's terrible.
Mhm.
And he doesn't get better.
Oh, he just gets. He's the best in this book.
Yeah, which is
This
sad.
is the
No,
best Regal's gonna be.
yeah, it's wild to think that given that in this book his claim to fame is literally trying to usurp the rightful heir to the
And
throne.
he kills everyone. He's
Yeah.
just like, murder for you, murder for you, murder for you, poison for you. Like, calm down. You
Yeah,
can't
and like
kill your whole, like, he's going to come back home with no one.
No.
It's going to be him on his high horse and Ketrican.
mm,
Yeah. Even Fitz says that, like, you think you can just leave a bloodbath and no one's gonna notice? And Regal's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm important, so
He's like,
important.
if I
No
act
one's
like I don't care about what I do, then people will realize that I don't care what I do.
yeah, no, but like it's such like other than the time that like fits skills into Regal's mind, I feel like this is like the most telling thing of Regal's character. And I think that because other characters in the series don't get to experience this scene, they like they see like the pettiness of Regal, but they don't see that he has this completely different worldview and philosophy, and that's what makes them
Mhm.
underestimate him. Because yeah,
Yeah,
he's
they
like
don't see the weight.
He
yeah,
has self-importance of a toddler. Like, he literally
And he
thinks,
has tantrums of a toddler. Like, he is, like, he's still stunted like a little kid.
mhm.
hmm,
But
from
he's got these like dangerous motivations of an adult, which is the scary part. Because when you
And he's
combine the
got the power of an adult also. Like, he
hmm
can
power
do what he
of.
wants, he can command what he wants.
Mhm.
yeah, and the thing is like I feel like there's this thing of like we see him at his worst when like especially like in like when he's in the depths of his cup or in the smoke or whatever, and he's just kind of rambling. And he seems kind of like wimpy and powerless in those moments. We're like, how does this guy ever get shit done? But then you see him in other times, and it's like, oh, okay, he does know how to like turn on the charm, which is why he's able to like move the inland duchies to his cause.
Hmm.
He's not like a master manipulator, but like he's the type of person who understands what makes other people like him tick, and he's able to play on that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so important character introduction from this chapter. We get to meet um oh shoot,
Forrest
I forgot
and
her.
right?
Huh? Yeah,
We
Ruris and Ketrican, and also I'm forgetting the name of
Anqui.
Jonqui. I was thinking like Johnny, and I'm like, they're missing a syllable in here.
This time around, I read it as like with the J being an H or something, or like honky, and I don't know why. I think it's
Oh.
taking me back to Spanish class.
Yeah. Um, One line I noted here from Ketrigan when she's like talking to Fitz so much about I think she's like accusing him of being an assassin or something, and he pretends that he doesn't understand her. But there's like this whole length of prose, and it kind of struck me when I was reading it, that Fitz like hasn't studied this language. He's
And he
understanding.
knows it so well.
Mhm.
You speak our language so well, almost like a native, almost as if you were recalling it rather than learning it new. And I was like, I wonder
As he
why.
is.
Mhm. Yeah, honestly, I'm like I'm taking away writing points from like Hobb for that. That's like the least subtle line. I'm like, no, I love it because like so many other things in this book are like really subtle and good. But I just like I love it where it's like, weird. It's almost like you know this language, and it's like, yeah, the
I wonder if Fitz grew up bilingual, or if he first learned
Maybe that's why
Chirga
he's
and
quiet.
then he learned like Buck English, or if he heard it with both. Like, I wonder if Chivalry came to visit him, or like Chivalry's men would come to visit and they would speak in like the language of Buck.
and we know that probably like some members of like the six duchies like probably stayed behind like because it sounded like these negotiations took a while and I'm assuming like romances formed some people decided to stay so like and like we know that Fitz understands enough of like buck buck English like that by the time he goes to the castle he's able to understand what Verity and the guards and like literally everyone is
Yeah,
saying because he
right.
remembers it so like yeah, I think like it makes sense for him to like grow up bilingual and then like once he hits Buckkeep, since no one speaks Chur, that it just sort of like faded away.
Mm.
I wonder if we get such a positive coloring of this culture because Fitz has these like repressed memories of growing up there. So he has
Yeah,
kind of an alliance that he doesn't really even recognize or
Hmm.
realize. Because he has the mentality of sacrifice without growing up in that culture, like directly.
Hmm.
Buckkeep isn't. Shade is a little bit like that, but Fitz, like, we see it at the end of this book, he is 100% willing,
he
no
accepts his role
reason, to
full
just,
on.
Well, it's
yeah, to
interesting
just
because I
give
feel
all
like
his strength to Verity.
he's like a sacrifice for like the people he cares about, but he also doesn't want to be a sacrifice for the kingdom, which is like it's interesting because I feel like because Chade definitely like it's like oh Ketrican she like gets it she gets what it means to be a monarch like because his thing is like you selflessly give yourself up for the sake of the kingdom. But Fitz is like, no, I want my own life. I hate like being controlled by the monarchy. But when you add this like people element into it, I think he gets it, which is interesting because I think it's almost like a framing issue for him because he sees like the
Yeah,
kingdom as like a daunting thing. But then when you talk about the people, he's like, yeah, I love cooking the kitchens and the men at arms and the people in Buckkeep Town and like the people of these. I don't want anything to happen to them. So yeah.
You see it too when we get into like the later books and he sees firsthand the effects of forging and stuff. He gets fiercely like protective. Like, these are my people. I think he just hates I think what happens at the end of this book, because he kind of guesses that Shrewd gives him up to Regal. I think that like traumatizes him in terms of the court intrigue aspect of it. So then he's like, I would like my own life because I can't trust any of you.
yeah.
But he
Mhm.
still wants to like help save the people of
Verity and stuff.
yeah, yep.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like he's jaded on duty because he's forced into it so much, but like
Hmm.
he yeah, I agree. He's like naturally drawn to it. And it's also interesting like talking about like whether he has an affinity for Jhaampe because like the way that he frames it in his view is like he's like, yeah, well, I love all these herbs and plants because I know them because of my work with Shade, but I almost wonder if like the reason he had an affinity for that work with Shade and also like an affinity because we know that also with Fedrin, he's good at like ephedrine patients. He's good at recognizing and like kind of recalling the effects of these herbs. I wonder if that's kind of like because he grew up in Jhaampe and was exposed to like that sort of knowledge, like herbal lore at a young age.
Hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it because I feel like the people there use herbs a lot more than they would use anything else for like healing or I don't know, all of that stuff.
Pretty much. Um. Oh yeah, one thing that like slipped me by when I first read this book is how Jean-Qui takes note of Fitz's name because Fitz is like, yeah, she like kept repeating my name as though like striving to remember it. But we know that like Jean-Qui has definitely heard that name before from Ketrican because of the whole Regal thing. And so it's more like she was probably like, oh shit, this is Fitz. Um, which is also like indicated by like you'd expect that when because later on there's like when she's introducing Fitz, she like turns to Ketrican and is like, this is Fitz jewelry, which like didn't strike me as odd at the time, but then I'm like, oh, you'd expect her to turn to Rurisk instead because like Rurisk worked with Fitz's dad and like had the relationship. Ketrican was like very young at that point and wouldn't know. But the reason that Jonky turns to Ketrican is like, hey, yeah, this is the poisoner you were warned about. This is the guy. Take note. So yeah, I thought that was a really like cool and subtle detail there.
Yeah, it's interesting though too because later on it's pretty clear that Jonqui doesn't really think that Fitz has anything to do with like the actual poisoning. I wonder if that's something she realized later and she was just like on defense early on and still
I
trying to
think
figure out
so.
the information, but then like Petrican's pretty rash. She like basically Jonqui's like signing Fitz's death warrant by introducing him to Ketrican in this moment because she's right away like, come eat some plants with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think that like Rurisk and Junkie were like expecting it to be like scouting out, but like feel out is everything true? Because they probably already are like catching on to the fact that Regal is a bit of a bullshitter. But then Ketrican is like, yeah, Ketrican's just so like protective of Rurisk, and like again, yeah, it makes a lot of sense
And
for her to like do that.
I bet that she came down John Cree came down to like carry Fitz up to the castle or the you know what I mean,
Hmm.
to scope it out first. Because I'm sure she knew that that was him. And he
Well,
looks identical to his dad, so of course she knows it's him.
Hmm.
So she's like, "Let me see what this dude's all about." And she probably went slow, not only so that he could like admire the land and stuff, but so that she could get a feel for like who he is and what he's about.
she didn't hide who she was, but she didn't tell him who she was.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she knew he would assume she was just like some rando.
Hmm.
So then she could see how he really is without without him like putting on a
A front for the
facade.
royalty.
Right. Yep. She
Yeah,
just
like
seems so smart. Like, I love her.
yeah, like Jonqui, Rurisk, there's so many cool characters that we only get to see in like this one section of the book, and I'm like, no, I wish Rurisk hadn't died. I wish we got to see Jonqui like later on. Especially since
Doesn't
there's so much like real estate in these books. Like it's not like a normal like series where like sometimes characters have to go in and out or serve a single purpose because like there's not space. Like there's 16 books here. There's like 9 books just set around Fitz. Like give me some
Dunkley
of these
comes,
characters.
she comes
Dunkley
back
comes
in
back.
Tawny Man, right?
If he does, then I feel stupid because I don't remember that.
No, that's maybe
Was that
Tawny Man.
someone else?
Definitely Assassin's Quest, right? They're back in Jhaampe after he gets
I
by
thought
the arrow.
I thought she like goes on her own adventure and she like shows up a little bit in the live ship traders and she's like working on some ship or something and then she goes to she like shows up in the first book of Tawny Man and the fool greets her and is like friends because she knows the fool as Amber. And so
Wait, no,
she
that's Jack.
greets the fool as Amber and as like a woman. And then Fitz is like, what the fuck? Like, unless that's a different woman with like a similar name. But I
Yeah,
really,
yeah, that's Jack.
Thinking of
Jack
Jack.
is a
oh,
completely
okay.
different character. Yeah.
Look, I tried my best.
I get Jonqui and Joffron mixed up a lot because Joffron is the one that Fitz thinks the fool has a kid with. Is he like with her in her cabin?
Yeah.
I get those two mixed up sometimes, but I thought Jonqui came back a little bit in Assassin's Quest when they're back in Jhaampe.
Maybe she does then.
There's a lot of
possible.
J's.
I had
There's
one
so
more.
many
I had one
names.
more little note to this stack of papers on the side of my table that are like, yeah, reasons I should reread reread the Fits in the Fool trilogy. Mhm. But yeah, okay. Is there anything else before we move on to chapter 21? Okay, so chapter 21 is called Princes. I know, yeah, Ketrican poisons Fitz, who is dumb and is like and just eats whatever Ketrican gives him and forgets the fool's warning like less than 24 hours after being in Jhaampe. So Ruris comes to visit him and is like, "Hey, sorry about that. Um, you know, we were just kind of scouting you out. We heard some stuff, but hypothetically, if you were the poisoner, you would gain nothing if I was to die. So let's have like this little conversation." Um, and this is basically the princess in the title is it could be either reference to chivalry or Rurisk and Fitz, which is I think a cool thing. But basically, it's
Or
about like
Rurik and Regal.
or
Yeah.
Rurisk and Regal. That is actually a really good point. I did not think about that. Um,
Because don't they both have like a significant role in this chapter? Is this when Regal summons Fitz to his? Oh no, that's later.
yeah,
I think
Right.
that might
that's
be
the dilemma. The next chapter.
but Fitz is thinking so much about Regal and everything, this whole chapter. This
Yeah.
whole section. He's constantly like, what do I do? What do I
Regal's lying.
Right.
Oh, on God? Like, I love how
Right.
like sometimes Fitz is like, I can't believe it that he would do this, and it's like, yeah, we aren't at the part where like we have jaded Fitz who's like, yeah, of course, it's Regal, he'll do anything.
Right. It's like you've grown up with him for almost 10 years. Like you know that he's shitty.
But
Of
I
course
think
he's gonna do you.
I think Fitz really doesn't know Regal that well because he avoids him at all costs.
Yeah, that's true.
Whenever they're
Just knows
close by, Fitz tries to like sneak away or Regal like shoves him and then Fitz leaves. So I'm
Yeah, and
not sure
so
he
far
really
he's been
knows
like,
how much about Regal.
yeah, and
he
so far like
doesn't
Regal's been characterized as like petty. He's like an asshole, but like we haven't seen have we seen like murderous intent from him before? I don't think so.
No, not yet.
hasn't had a reason yet to suspect him of treason. No, it like doesn't even occur to Fitz. Just
Mhm.
like this, we're sent here to do this because that's what Richard told us to do. Like it doesn't occur to him that Regal could be trying to kill everybody.
And that's exactly what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. I like that his master plan is just like, fucking kill all of them. Like we can cover it up. No one's gonna question me. I'm a prince.
Yeah.
Or just act like you don't care. Like let people ask questions and be like, so what if I did?
Which,
Like
interestingly, is kind of the vibe that's going on here with Rurisk and Fitz, where it's like, yeah, if you were the poisoner, like hypothetically, let's have a conversation where we just assume, maybe, for argument's sake. And yeah, that whole thing gave me the same vibes as like the fool's like, I wasn't there, of course. Like that whole like dancing around
mhm.
it type of
But if I
conversation.
was,
Hmm. But yeah, also like talking about Ketrican as impulsive and stuff, or like rash, was really interesting to me because like this feels like such a contrast from like the really like centered, mature Ketrican we get to see develop in Royal Assassin. Like
yeah.
I feel like even like the first few scenes we see Ketrican in, she's like meditating. Like there's a real like sense of like calm and centeredness to her that like I think that if you were to just read this book, you would not anticipate.
No, but she still has like a little bit of that sense of like there's a part where she just kind of rides out and like battles forged ones and Verity's like embarrassed. still get little, I think it's one thing, like one growth we get to see from her character. We see her go from like this rash teenager that'll just poison someone on a whim.
Because she's worried for her brother.
Right, to this like queen that's very like like held back and intellectual about everything she does.
Yeah, it's definitely not abrupt. Like there's like
Yeah.
there's stages to it, but like it's just like one of those things where like when I first read this book, I never would have imagined like how cool Ketrican ends up being, and like I really appreciate that like sense of development. Um, yeah, other stuff in this chapter. Oh yeah, I really like the line from Rurisk when Ketrican is like, aren't you going to ask him if he was going to poison you?" And then Rurisk is like, "If he answered yes, you would never trust him. If he answered no, you would probably not believe him and think him a liar as well as an assassin. Besides, is not one admitted poisoner in this room enough?" And I'm like,
I loved
damn.
the sass. That was my freaking favorite. Because it's just like, it's definitely sibling sass, and like you can tell. And I loved it.
There was another line from Maris that I liked where it's this whole thing about how he's talking about how good the alliance would be because of him. And he says, "So will you carry my words to King Shrewd and say to him that it is better to have a live friend in me?" And I thought that was so interesting because most people, if they knew that the king of like country they're trying to have an alliance with wants to have them killed, it would cut off negotiations. But he knows that this alliance will be good for his people, so he's like
He's
willing
willing to
to
risk
risk.
his life.
In a
Right, and
true
he's just
sacrifice
hoping.
fashion.
He's hoping that like he can talk sense into them, but he's also like still wanting to move forward. And I think that's something that like makes a lasting impact on him and Ketrican because they both have that attitude like going forward for the rest of the books.
One thing I wonder that I think takes place in this same scene is when Fitz says it's too late to apologize for I've already forgiven you, and then Rurisk is like, oh, like your father's line. I want to know, who do you think actually coined that phrase? Do you think it was chivalry, or do you think Patience said it first and he just picked it up?
Picked it up.
Like, who took from who or whom or whatever?
Definitely feels a lot more formal than I would like credit Patience with. I feel like credit, but it's also got that like
Has that
not
like
not not, not
It's got the
dismissive,
Patience
but
vibe to it,
yeah, it's
though,
just like,
doesn't
oh
it?
like
I bet she
like
said
whatever, let's
something
move
like
on.
more casual. Yeah, I think she said something like that, and then Chivalry was like, I like that, and like made it sound more formal, and he's like, I'm just gonna use this now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
has such a Patience vibe because she's so like hot-headed, but then she'll recover so quickly that like
She
she'll get
definitely
really
doesn't
pissed
hold a
about
grudge.
something. Yeah, and then she'll
Mhm.
be like, care about it anymore.
Mhm.
Like, I'm over
I
it.
love
I've
her.
forgiven you.
Um, oh yeah, another line that I really liked when Fitz is kind of just like wandering around the royal household. I later wondered if that might not be the secret to a harmonious household, that all servants are royalty be treated with the same courtesy. And I feel like this is something that like Fitz I think like really carries with him and like keeps with him, uh, both like practically as like because he's like he knows that's like a really good way to like get information out of people, but also just as like a philosophy of like yeah, having been both around like the common people and the monarchy, there's like there's a line like way later on where it's like maybe even in Tawny Man where he's talking about how like there's not much different except that the rich are like I forget the exact thing, but there's definitely something in like Tawny Man where he's like the they when they're like partying and they have the smoke and everyone's getting drunk, he's like, yeah, the rich are not less crass than the common folk, or in fact maybe
Mhm.
more so. So
We see that too when he's like a holder in the beginning of um, Fitz and the Fool, because he really like treats all the people that live and work at Withywood's, like, talks to them the way he would talk to, like, a noble in terms of mutual respect. He doesn't think them beneath him by any means. He probably thinks he's beneath them, honestly.
Yeah.
He's just, like, so self-deprecating, but yeah, he's always very, like, he doesn't think about things in terms of a class structure. Or you're beneath me because you're a servant or whatever. We get another reference in this chapter to that line from Shrewd, the like, don't do what you can't undo. And I was wondering, like, at first I was like, oh, well, Shrewd said that trying to teach a lesson to Regal, but it's learned the lesson instead. But then I thought, Shrewd being shrewd, maybe he said it within earshot of both of them on purpose to try to teach them the lesson, but Fitz is just the only one that picked it up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, he's trying to... But I feel like it's probably more intended for Regal specifically because, like, it feels like a lesson that, like, you teach someone that you're grooming for royalty with the idea... But also, like, I guess it could apply to the assassin life, too. Yeah, okay, I could definitely see it both ways. Like, especially since, like, as he's giving him the pin, he's probably deciding, like, yes, you will be my little baby assassin. So, yeah.
Yeah, don't kill anybody if you are unsure about it because you can't undo death.
Meanwhile, Regal is like, ah, yes, I understand. Kill everyone?
Yeah.
So probably the next part here is Rurisk, there's like a party and there's a bunch of smoke, and Rurisk senses that like Fitz is still not, oh no, there's not smoke, there's a lot of food, but Fitz is just like tired as hell because of the poisoning. And Rurisk like picks on that, it's like, hey, let's go for a walk, let's go to the kennels. Which, again, I love this on the level of like, Rurisk, despite knowing Fitz for like all of like 3 seconds, from the start of the chapter is able to have like a really like intelligent conversation where he like kind of picks apart Fitz's motives and like presents them back to him, and also is like, yeah, you probably will like the dogs, right? That'll help you calm down and help you chill out. Which, like, how did he pick up on that? Maybe chivalry also like dogs. No,
Well,
but it's just like,
I bet also that like Rurisk enjoys the company of animals too, and he sometimes like will go to the kennels to unwind or to escape from like all of the like hubbub of the palace, and he just kind of thought maybe Fitz likes this too, or like let me at least just be in my happy place and he could be fine with it.
And yeah, because I think Rurisk is also like, at the very least, like wit sensitive, given how like Nosy reacts to him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
But I feel
speaking of which, Nosy's back. He didn't actually fucking
woohoo!
die yet. But
Except
yeah.
he's a nice little old man dog now.
Yeah,
No,
I imagine him as like a really droopy, like, I don't know why, but like they always say like russet fur or whatever, and I just imagine him as like a tiny droopy Clifford.
Oh my god, I love that. I imagine him as I can't remember the name of it. Let me look it up. I think it's like
I imagine him as like one of the dogs from where the red fern grows.
I imagine him as a Vizsla. Vizsla.
I could see
That's
that.
exactly how I picture him because I'm like, he's a little red dog.
I love that they mention that, or Rurisk mentions that he's sired like enough pups to relax, and I was like, I want a nosy pup.
Same.
And I just, yeah.
Then Fitz immediately goes and confronts Burrich about it. Like,
I know, I
as
love that.
the conversation ends, and then I love this like interaction where Burrich says, "You believed I would kill a dog for something you did." And then he says something else, and he says, "How you must have hated me." And Fitz says, "And feared you." Like, they kind of mutually understand this weird distance they've had towards each other all these years since.
And they're so close to a breakthrough, but Burge is such a stubborn motherfucker that it's not until Fitz is literally on death's door that he's like, oh, maybe I should put this aside.
Right.
And I love this is like the first open conversation that they've had without any miscommunication. And Fitz is like being like, I've missed you, missed you sorely despite all our differences. Like he is admitting his feelings. And Birch just turns him around and I'm like, oh, my heart.
Birch is such an asshole in this book. Like,
I
seriously.
know, he's gotta calm it down. And then
I
he's
know.
like sensing the wit is different than using it. I'm like, shut the fuck up. You're
Fucking
using it if you sense
cognitive
it.
dissonance ass motherfucker out here.
Right.
Hmm. But yeah, it's. I hate Birch, but I hate to hate him as well because he also does obviously care for Fitz and do things for him because yeah, the Witness Stones is the most emotional chapter for me, but it's so hard to swallow because why it's like he's not like that all the time.
He's only like that when Fitz isn't watching.
Hmm. But that
Honestly,
kind of ties into what patient or what Lacey said, where like you think your sons are all like the worst or whatever until you turn around and then you look and they're over here charming everybody else except for you. It's
Mhm.
kind of like that's how Burrich is. He defends Fitz to everybody else and takes care of Fitz like from everybody else, except Fitz doesn't really see that.
Right.
Mhm.
He's not very nice to him. Like, he's never just like,
There's several times where Fitz is he's explaining to things to me as though I was a dumbass. That
Yeah.
happens at least 4 times in this book. It happens once in this section.
yeah,
Yeah.
takes care of him. And like, even when he's sick or whatever, he'll take care of him for a certain amount of time and then he'll be like, do chores. Like,
I think it's also because Burge is bad at affection, so he's just as soon as he feels like something is getting a little bit too close to feelings, he's like, I'm actually I have the power role here. Go do stuff.
hmm.
We need to establish our roles again. I'm becoming too mushy.
Hmm.
Okay. Is there anything else here?
I don't think
Okay.
so.
So the next chapter is chapter 22, Dilemmas. And so yeah, so while we've so far we've been kind of getting accustomed to Jhaampe, but this is where we start really ramping up into the climax of the book. Um, so the whole of this is essentially Regal charges Fitz with killing Rurisk no matter what. Fitz is like, shit, I can't do that, but also if I refuse Regal, something bad is gonna happen. Fitz tries to warn Rurisk and not actually kill him. Um, but oops, didn't consider a possibility and accidentally gets him killed. Um, and essentially gets himself poisoned and is just like, okay, this is kind of the end game. I'm I don't have anything left to me. I gotta figure something out. Regal wants to treat with me. Let's find out what he wants, kind of thing. So lots of things just escalate real quick, plot wise.
Um, the intro, I made a note about it, but now I don't remember what it was. My note was this a dream or could it be a memory? Something about like a
The Fitz,
warning.
so the fool is standing over Fitz, and he's like, "Do you think I keep you alive just because I'm so enamored of you? No,
Oh,
you as long as you're alive, there are possibilities." It's basically just the fool being like, "Yeah, you're my catalyst," but in a lot more words. Which yeah, it felt like that's why I also put I wonder where it came from because it feels so there's no way for Fitz to have known these things. So it makes sense for it to be a memory where just in the middle of the night the fool is just or maybe even when Fitz was recovering from being beaten up by Galen, the fool is by his bedside and doing this and he's only remembering it now. Something like
I also thought that Fitz could be like skill dreaming to the fool. And the fool is like aware of it and is like,
maybe.
let me tell you what's going on. And this is why you need to stay alive and fight.
That could be
Yeah.
true, especially since we see that like kind of like when his body's shutting down, he becomes much more like um
Just like
much more like
floats
open to
around.
yeah,
He's
and
like,
like he's like hella exhausted in like in between these chapters, like because of the poisoning and being forced to stay up, and he basically like he he hits the pillow and he's out.
And I think he realizes, or at least when he's dreaming, he doesn't really know to be closed off. And I think
Mhm.
he's so guarded when he's awake that maybe he like doesn't like his unconscious or subconscious doesn't have any energy to like remain that guarded when he's asleep. So he just kind of opens up and like goes and does what he needs to
And like
do.
this is supported by how in Tawny Man that exact same thing happens with Dutiful and Nettle.
And
Mhm.
how Verity in this um book, like at the end, he's like, Ketrikin keeps wondering why I dream so much of drowning because
Hmm.
he's dreaming Fitz's dreams because
Hmm.
Fitz is skilling it out.
You
Yeah.
guys think so? There's a part in this chapter where Fitz is trying to figure out if he should go through with killing Rurisk. So he demands that August like skill to shrewd for him to ask him this question, and August is just like he says, "Listen to Regal." I don't know. Do you guys think August really skilled to him? I think August is so in Regal's pocket by this point that I don't really believe that he actually skilled to him, or if he did, that he didn't relay the message that fits.
I think that he definitely skilled to him. I think it's probably just like he didn't use the exact words Fitz did, like shortcutted it, and then as a result, Shrewd didn't get the full import of the message and was just like, oh, fucking whatever. Just like I'm in the middle of something, just like listen to Regal.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I'm not even sure that August can skill out. Like, I think August can only be used for people to skill stuff to him and go into him. He's never like known how or learned how to reach out to somebody else. So that's why he's like telling Fitz, like, you don't even know how it works because he doesn't think that that's something that he can do. And then also, I think even if he got out and he got to Shrewd, that Shrewd's like lack of skill or like the fact that he burnt his skill out so many years ago, like Shrewd wouldn't have even noticed or been able to like be open like that.
It's a good point.
Yeah, there's
I
something.
always forget that like Shrewd's skill was like burnt out because I don't think they like bring back like what caused it to burn out. So like I
Yeah.
read that I'm like, oh, I completely forgot that like Shrewd just straight up has no skill.
Yeah, it's like a throwaway line that like Shrewd's skill is like it's not completely gone, but it's basically like super weak and hardly existent.
Mhm.
Yeah, because like what is the line? It's like burnt out because of uh
Like oh, like
yeah, it's burned and dulled
abuse.
away years ago by misuse, and him too proud to admit it. And I'm like, what's the story behind that? I feel like there's so much like especially like it feels like something that would contextualize Shrewd's character a lot more too.
And I also wonder like how is that even something that's possible? Because Fitz never burns out of skill. Like I feel like
Right.
Okay, Fitz is
this
like Fitz is
August
literally a
does.
superhero when it comes to like the skill. Like he's
Yeah.
like probably one of the most talented people in generations.
yeah.
This book is or this series is one of those where like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones where it's got such a good history like that it feels real and you want to know so much of those like backstories. Like I want to be able to step into this world and find out like, yeah, why was Shrewd's skill burnt out or like what happened with all these coteries in the past that went to the mountains. Like there's just so many little details you pick up on or like she could write an entire series about like Burrich and chivalry in their
Mhm.
years, you know?
Yeah.
Like and it would be fascinating.
Yeah, speaking of it feeling real, not one of my proudest moments, but there was one time when I was like reading it super late at night. I was super tired because I just came back from like a full day of classes. Um, and I think this was like maybe either the first or second book, and I was like, oh yeah, like I wonder more about this, and I looked it up on Google as though I was like trying to find like the fucking Wikipedia page for the history of this shit. And then like I like realized about like 2 seconds in how stupid that was, and I'm like, oh, never mind.
It would be so nice
Oh.
if we had like internet just for Realm of the Elderlings things. That would be so cool. To just look
Sometimes-
up whatever you wanted to know.
Yeah, sometimes I'll use the like Realm of the Elderlings wiki, but that like isn't
It's so
super well
sparse. Yeah.
updated. Yeah, it's pretty sparse. Like I hate like I spoil things for myself on purpose because if I'm stressed out about an outcome, I literally can't even enjoy what I'm like reading. I'll do it for movies too. Like I can't enjoy the movie I'm watching if I'm worried about who's gonna die at the end. So I'll just look it up and then I can actually like enjoy it. I've tried to do that a couple times on the Realm of the Elderlings wiki, and it's just like not detailed enough, so then I can't figure out what happens. I get mad.
You have to find spoilers elsewhere.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay. Speaking of August, oh yeah, this is like, I fucking love this line. August is like, "Do not take it amiss, bastard, but I do not wish to be seen associating with you." And then
And
and
Fitz
then
is
like
basically like likewise.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
do not take it amiss, lordling, that I feel the same way about you. And I'm like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
totally justified August as being an asshole. And
For no
I love
reason.
when Fitz gets to be like sassy and like pull rank on him. Like,
Yes.
yes.
Well, and
Well,
they're like kind of cousins, so like it makes
Yeah,
sense a
they're
little bit
cousins, but then like
of
August is
the
like, "Ah,
staff.
you failed the skill training, bastard. I'm like so cool and skilled and stuff."
Yeah. And he's like, shut the fuck up. I could kill you if I wanted.
I thought it was funny that when Fitz like he has to get dressed up, I think to go talk to Regal about something, and he says like, "I got dressed in my annoying clothes." And that's like a theme that continues throughout the entire rest of the series. If Fitz has to
Fitz
wear
hates
anything other
formal
than like
clothes.
travel
Fitz
clothes,
hates fashion. He's like,
he hates
this
it.
is
He's
so
always
unfunctional. Where are my pockets?
like,
Yeah.
The sleeves are so dangly and
My
long.
sleeves keep dipping into my food.
my pointy shoes. And like,
Mhm.
I love it.
funny that, like I after reading everything else and then reading that's something that like from this very first book is a character trait of
Fitz
his.
is very consistent with his hate of formal clothing.
I feel like if Fitz existed in like our world, he would be the type of motherfucker to wear the same white t-shirt every day. Like he has like a closet full of like this 5 copies of the same white t-shirt and like
Yes.
some gym shorts or something.
They're all dirty. And then he wears those pants that like zip off at the knees to become short.
Yes. He's like, they're functional if I get hot.
Ugh.
Oh my god. His kids would be so embarrassed by him.
I mean, yeah, the fool exists to be embarrassed. And it's just, the
Yeah.
fool is like a fashion icon, and is just like this
The
guy
fool's
has
like, I
zero
can't
game.
believe you're wearing that. You look so bad in that. Let me fix you.
Yeah. Oh, and it's like this is like getting on way further, but I love the moment where like the fool is like, ah, yes, you look so good. Like, there's definitely like that. I've definitely had that with like, with friends where like you find something that you think they'll look like really good in, and you're like, and they're wearing it, and you're like, yes, I've achieved my vision. You look awesome.
Yes.
It's a yeah.
My
It's
work
a
of
mood.
art.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Um. Oh yeah, and there's this whole section in the middle where Fitz is like thinking, "What the fuck do I do?" And I love in this section how we can see how the smoke is like gradually affecting him. Starting off with a line with like, "Perhaps I should save time and cut my own throat," because like at this point he's definitely like depressed at this point in his life, but he doesn't like he isn't so like maudlin about expressing it usually.
Mhm.
So like when he says that, or like so wry, I guess as well. So like when he says that, you're like, "Huh, something's weird," and then he goes down like the whole list of things. Um, my favorite was,
And
I
he's
could
like,
tell
maybe
Regal
I
I
could
was
just
going to
go.
kill Rurisk and then kill Regal instead. And then he says,
Yeah,
like, it was only the smoke that made that sound so wise. I'm like, no, that sounds great. Do that.
it
The series would have been
does.
a lot better
You
if you did.
probably should have listened to yourself.
Uh,
I love that he gets so giggly. And he's like giggling as he's like walking to Rurisk's door. Like it's so cute. Except
Mhm.
then it's sad.
It was during that section where he's like thinking about it, there was this part where he says Regal had told me that he specifically requested Lady Time, but Shrewd sent me instead. I recalled how Chade had puzzled over that, and finally I recalled his words to me, and my king given me up to Regal. Like that part always sticks with me because that would be like traumatizing to realize that your
Someone you
grandpa
trusted kind of gave you up.
basically
It's
like,
also like
well,
almost like a flip thing of like the earlier one where like Fitz was
yeah.
traumatized by like having to betray Shrewd, and now he's like traumatized
And
by the
now
idea of
Shrewd's
like, what if my
betraying
king
him.
betrayed me? Yeah.
Because Shrewd basically was like, Shade's too valuable to me, so I'll send him instead. And if Regal kills him,
So what?
I
Eh.
still have my main poisoner.
hmm
Oof, that sucks.
Yeah, and
Fits.
this is also relating to that. We have like a reinforcement of this later on in like the final chapter. But even here, Fitz says, I was a king's man. I had told Verity so. And I feel like this is
Hmm.
the start of him subconsciously, before he like consciously expresses it later, starting
Yeah,
to
being
regard
like
Verity as
Verity
his
is my
king,
king.
Shrewd as his king.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Shrewd's out. He's so last season.
hmm Oh yeah, there's also this thing where like when before going to see Rurisk, Fitz goes to see Ketrikin. Um, the first time I read this scene, I was like so fucking confused because like when Fitz is like all smoked up, he doesn't like have that same like internal monologue. Like he has a different kind of internal monologue.
Yeah,
He doesn't have like the same like expressing
he
my thought
doesn't tell
process.
us what he's gonna do.
Yeah, so I'm
Right.
like, what the fuck is going on? I didn't realize how adrift I felt without that kind of like constant like thought process until like it stopped happening. I'm like, he's just doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
hmm But yeah, also I just found it like super funny how like he was like, I wanted to smile and be witty and clever before her, pale beauty, I thought, and like it's like so obvious that he's like he finds her like attractive, and like but like throughout the rest of the series, he's like, no, that's that's Verity's wife. I
Verity's
can't.
girl.
Yeah. hmm Um,
After he's like poisoned, he hears this, he's like skill floating all over the place. And he hears this conversation between what I'm assuming is Regal and Galen.
Mhm.
Makes it kind of seem like Galen is the mastermind. And I think that makes sense because once he dies, like this whole setup is pretty conniving. Like Fitz figures it out, but like barely and should have died. Like Regal pretty much almost got away with it. But later on, Regal's more just like outright being a messy bitch and less like secretive
Sneaky. Yeah.
conniving, you know? Like
well,
it kind of makes
I was
sense that
expecting you to say like treasonous or something, and then just like the messy bitch just like hit me straight in the chest.
I mean, that's exactly what he
I
is.
mean,
yeah,
true facts.
Not wrong.
hmm
I
Galen
love
was
that. Yeah. And I love that Regal, like, Fitz calls Regal the little mouse or like the mouse
Yeah,
because
like
I
he's
bet
like
his skill is
squeaking.
so weak that he like sounds so quiet and so little like a tiny little mouse. And he can only tell it's like Galen because he's touched minds with Galen already.
knows.
Mhm.
It has to compare everybody to an animal, too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just his life.
Mhm. Oh yeah, from that same skill conversation, the line, "You leave me standing in a bloodbath," and then Galen responds, "Wade through it to a throne," is way fucking cooler than those characters deserve. I feel like I just like missed this line in the first read, but that's so fucking metal. Like, what a set of lines.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
badass. I hate them
Mhm.
both, but that is a badass line.
Mhm. They get 1 point for that. Um, Oh yeah, we talked about like the Ruris scene and how they're like bantering and whatever. I like how like Ruris catches on so quickly to what's going on, despite also presumably being like slightly smoke-addled. Like, we know that he goes to his room to, like, specifically indulge or whatever. But, like,
Hmm.
it sounds like just being at the party was pretty bad for that. Um, and say, despite being in this, like, inebriated state, he, like, immediately catches on to, like, oh, yeah, like, so this is, you've come here, so, like, I've been told to like, all that Fitz does is, like, pour the poison into his drink and, like, explaining, yeah, I've been expected to kill you, and, like, Ruruska's like, okay, that's what's going on. Like, he's so insightful, and I wish he could have sticked around, because it seems like another potential good father figure for Fitz. It's not like,
Yes. And
yeah,
he knew Fitz's father so well that he would, like, tell stories to Fitz about him, like, it would have been so wholesome and nice, but we
they could have
couldn't
gushed,
get one
yeah,
nice thing.
they could have gushed over, like, dogs and puppies and hounds, since they obviously cared about them, but, uh,
And I bet Fitz would even have revealed his wit to Rurisk, because I
mhm.
think that they view it so differently that Rurisk would kind of be like, "Oh my god, that's amazing, like, I want that."
Urus might just like lead Fit like, hey, I noticed you're really good at communicating with the dogs, and like Fitz is like, yeah, I grew up in like the stable, and Rose is like, no, I mean like you're really good at communicating with the dogs. Like Fitz
Yeah.
is like sweating over here, and he's like, maybe.
I wonder if Rurusk is witted.
If not witted, he's at
I
least
don't
very
know.
wit sensitive, given that how like Nosy immediately senses his death. Is my thing.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That
Yeah, that's
scene where
true.
he dies is so well written because I remember the first time I read it, I was like, oh, he's pretending he's not poisoned. They're having fun. They're joking. And then I was like, wait, is he? Why is he on the ground now? And then he like starts writhing and then Fitz starts feeling it. And I remember reading it the first time being like, oh shit. I did
Yeah.
It's actually
not,
like, oh, Rurisk, you joker, and it's
yeah,
like,
I
oh
did
fuck.
not see this coming. I was so confused. I was like, wait, how is he poisoned? I don't understand. And it wasn't like until Fitz figured it out that I figured it out, which is like, if you can get one over on the reader like that, that's such good writing. Like,
Mhm.
Robin Hobb is so good at twists
Yeah.
like that. I did not suspect a thing.
And how
Yeah.
traumatizing would that be for Kettricken? Like, they're
Yeah.
joking and happy, and she's, like, pissed because she's like, "Take this seriously," and then her brother just drops dead. Like,
Hmm.
ugh, I would definitely have some trauma from that.
Yeah, and she doesn't have the context that like Rurisk does. So obviously
Mhm.
she's just like in her estimation, Fitz is like, would you still marry Verity if I killed Rurisk? Okay, cool.
Then goes and
And he's
kills
just like,
Ruris.
Yeah.
yeah. It's like the dumbest shit ever from her perspective. She's like, what the fuck?
Right, like,
Yeah.
why did you just drink this cup that this poisoner offered you? Like,
Mm-hmm.
very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But
One
yeah,
thing
that
that
it's
oh,
so
go ahead.
sad. I was just gonna say, it's just that scene is so, I just think it's so well written. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah, another
even
piece of
when I'm
writing that
rereading
from that
it.
part, which like I think is like at least by me was underrated, was like it goes by so quickly, but like the Cobb death scene, where it's like as he fell, I suddenly saw a freckly stable boy saying, "Come along now. There's some good fellows." It could have gone so many
Mhm.
different ways. I had known this man. Killing him had killed a part of my own life. And I feel like there's
But
like so much in there where it's like it could have gone so many different ways. Feels like a very like fool kind of thought. And then I had known this man killing him killed a part of my own life. Sounds like so similar to what he was thinking before he was gonna like burn the fool on the pyre. And it's just like it's like such a melancholic thing because even though Cobb had like come to like hate him, there's like sort of this feeling of like I wish things didn't have to end up this way. But
Mhm.
yeah, definitely like learning early on that like how much like death means to him and how much death is important. But yeah.
Well, and I bet he also was, like, transported back to his childhood right before when he had just seen Nosy. So he
Mhm.
saw Nosy, and then he has to kill Cobb, who was taking care of him and Nosy before.
Mhm.
Like, that must be rough.
yeah, I feel like this series is less like directly action packed than a lot of other fantasy series, but like every death means something. I was listening to, I don't remember if it was like a review of these books or a panel or something, but someone said like no one swings an axe or a sword in these books without it meaning something. Like there's no like needless battles or like even
Yeah,
this,
it's not action just for the sake of action.
right, like this
I mean,
death of
like the
Cobb.
most like action-packed scenes, like Hobb almost like glosses over them, right? Because we have like Fitz's battle rage.
Hmm.
Even when we get like battles later on, like the Antler Island one becomes a theme throughout the entire series. Or like I think it's Neat Bay where like him and Night Eyes are fighting and some girl sees them like chilling by the well afterwards. That comes back around too. Like every battle that is mentioned has like a purpose for moving the story forward or like ties back around in some other way.
Hmm.
Everything's so meaningful.
Hmm.
Also, the part where he gets close enough to Cobb to smell him. He's like, I knew what he smelled like because that's what Smithy smelled.
Yes.
I was like, kill that motherfucker.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I also love that Fitz now is never unprepared because he has that knife on him. And like before, when he was dropped north of Forge, he had nothing. But I think now he kind of learned his lesson probably from that. And he's like, let me make sure I have something on my person at all times just in case, even in this beautiful place where everyone seems like they're good and nice. Like, you really never know.
Right.
Hmm. Um, okay, is there anything else from this chapter? Okay, so moving on to the penultimate chapter of the book, chapter 23, The Wedding, which is not at all about a wedding for the most part, but this is where all of the shit goes down. Yeah, I think we can just jump into it. I feel like a plot summary would be kind of inadequate because it's just everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
So
a
yeah, the
part in
chapters.
this. Oh,
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. I was just gonna say, this chapter is basically like the aftermath of, well, it's not because that's the next chapter's name, but Fitz is poisoned and they're trying to like scramble to figure out what to do. But there's a part where Verity skills to August and like gives him this basically riddle for Fitz and Burrich that's kind of saying like use um strength from the people around you, like use them to help
And
boost your
remain a
skill.
king's man and be loyal to the people who are loyal to the king.
And
Mhm.
Burrich tries to like let Fitz draw strength from him the way chivalry used to, which kind of indicates to me that Burrich doesn't know that chivalry locked him to
Yeah,
the skill, which
definitely.
is kind of shitty of chivalry to do without telling somebody.
I feel like he's aware of it like later on or mentions it. Maybe he's just not aware that that also applies to like skill strength. He just like conceives of being blocked to the skill as like a mind block rather than like a
Hmm.
physical energy block.
Guy doesn't know the extent of it. But I wondered like when chivalry did that and if it was possibly to try to protect Burrich and Fitz from Galen when he went to Withywood's because he wasn't going to be around anymore and he probably knew Galen was like a snake.
Hmm.
I wonder if he did it because I think he probably didn't realize the extent to which he did it. He probably just tried to block Burrich from the skill, not from like helping Fitz or like even skill healing. Like I think he probably didn't realize that there were so many different things. And then I also wonder like maybe he did it on his deathbed or something and he just did it really quick and that's why it was so strong and so severe because it was like a desperate last ditch thing. Because I wonder if he did use Burrich and like that skill even when he was in Withy Woods for a little bit. And then he had to get out quick and he's like, oh shit, like I gotta make sure he's safe.
You get the
Hmm.
sense, or I get the sense from things that chivalry did with skill, and then like Verity's mention of him like being skilled by to by chivalry was like getting run over by horses. Get the sense that chivalry was just like throwing skill around with reckless abandon. Like he had no
Yeah.
idea what he was doing or what he was capable of. He was just like obsessed with me to Galen. Like, but then, oops, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
I only
Yeah,
meant to
'cause
put a
they were
little
just
bit
like
of a block
never
under
actually
it.
taught good boundaries or how to use it, so it's just kind of like,
Mhm. It's like super
and they're so
powerful.
strong in it, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right.
But I love how like Verity like describes chivalry's thing as being like trampled by horses, and then later on this chapter, like Fitz is like he was like strong like a bull, and then he cuffed me like a bear, and it's just like, yeah,
Mhm.
okay, Verity, you are also heavy-handed,
Yeah.
literally with the skill, and like just like chivalry, like uh Verity does burn out someone, in this case, August.
Yep. Fitz probably is very much like chivalry as well, or at least gives, because there's a couple times, like once he skills to Verity, and Verity's like, chivalry? No, it can't be. It's the boy. And then he like skill walks to Patience, and Patience thinks it's chivalry as well. He's like,
Mhm.
chivalry, is that you? And I think he just says
He's like,
it's.
it's no one. And
That's
she
also
Yeah.
keeps
like, that's
going to
really
say,
interesting that like skill touches can also be similar between like family.
Right.
and that also, it has to mean that, like, Patience was touched by chivalry's skill before, right? Or Fitz's energy just felt so much like chivalry in real life
Mm.
that she just kind of assumed it was him.
Isn't Patience like a distant cousin of chivalry's something? Like I
I
thought
think
she
so.
was from the
She's like
Farseer
part of
line.
she's part of a noble
Like
family, so that sounds about right. Like
distant,
Yeah.
yeah, distantly related. So she probably has like a little bit of a touch of skill.
Mhm.
um oh yeah, going back, talking of patience, we find out that at the start of this chapter that uh the earring that Patience gave Fitz was originally from Burrich, and that it had like some special significance to it. Um which like okay, like next chapter there's like a line where Fitz is like, I think I finally guessed then what the earring signified. And look, okay, okay. I'm
It's
not out of.
love!
Yeah, that's what I thought when I first read this, okay? I was
There is
just like,
no doubt in my mind, it's fucking love.
yeah, I was like, it's so vague. And I'm like, even rereading it now, I'm not sure what it's supposed to mean. It's supposed to be like undying loyalty to your liege or
Yeah,
something.
I
That
got
Yeah, but there's
sounds a
no
lot
way
like
you would
love
just
with
give
extra
that to
steps
your
to
lord.
me.
right.
Mhm.
I got like unquestioning loyalty because prior to like letting Fitz keep that earring, he's like, you're using the wit. I never even want you to talk to me. I'm not gonna like. There's a part where Fitz is like poisoned, and he says, "Will you help me?" And Bert says, "I don't know." Bert
Mhm.
has to think about it, even though this kid's like dying and poisoned. And
Mhm.
then after all of this happens, when Burrich sees that he has the ring and doesn't let him give it back or whatever, like at the very end, Burrich says something like, "If you choose not to go back to Buck, then we'll go somewhere else." Like
And he says it he uses the
we will
plural.
go, yeah, and he leaves the decision up to Fitz. Like the relationship has changed, and now it's more of like, I'm gonna be with you, I'm gonna be loyal to you,
Mhm.
and I'll let you like make the call.
Mhm.
Mhm. I think it's like partially the earring, but I also think that like
Seeing his son dying can be a little
yeah, like
traumatic.
there's definitely like that
Yeah,
scary part where he's like, I don't know if I'll help you, but I think that's also because like Burrich has like no fucking clue what's going on. He's like, Fitz, are you a traitor? And then once he figures out that Fitz is not a traitor, like because so much of shit is happening, and Burrich is like, I haven't talked to this kid in so long, and now there's all this murder shit, and I never knew this kid was capable of murder shit. But then like yeah,
Yeah.
once he's like, oh, my boy is dying, and we have like work to do. I think that there's the confluence of like the earring being important and kind of like I follow the earring wherever it goes, and also like Fitz, you're my boy. Yeah.
I think it's like the earring is the physical manifestation representing the change in the relationship that happens.
Mhm.
Hmm. for sure.
Also, like you get when you read Live Ship and a little bit of Brain Wilds, but not as much. When you see the conditions of like the slaves and you understand how hard it is for them to get out of that, and then you like know that Birch's grandmother like managed that and got that earring, it holds so much more weight once you get that background stuff from like the other books.
Mm-hmm.
It's astounding to me that Burrich just gave that earring to Chivalry.
It's
It has
definitely
to
like
be
there's
no,
no way that it's just loyalty. Like I would never give something like that means so much to me to
yeah,
just my boss.
like an
Like that is your
invaluable family
man.
heirloom. Yeah.
That's your man. That's why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do they ever actually end up like properly dispelling the say slave trade in like Rain Wilds? Because like I know that like that was one of Amber's goals in Life Ship, but I don't remember it like coming to fruition in that book.
I'm not sure.
The dragons destroy Calcid, and Calcid was like basically the like
Yeah, and the princess is
area.
more inclined to like be a
Yeah, I don't think
nicer person because I think Selden like saves her or something a little bit.
Oh wow.
they
Okay.
have like a little thing. So I think, and he's very anti-slavery, obviously. So I think by destroying Chelset or whatever, they're kind of beginning the steps to topple that, but that doesn't happen
Yeah.
until like the very end of Rain Wilds.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, because like I think one thing that like I was a little bit dissatisfied with in Live Ship is I was like, man, Amber's like we all like we have to like the slave trade is evil and horrible and we have to dismantle it. But I feel like the books end on like and they're like everything's happy and I'm like, did we forget about all the slaves? The slaves are still here. They're
Yeah.
hanging out. Maybe they're free in Bingtown, but like a lot of shit needs to happen for like actual like meaningful like long lasting change. But yeah, that's a
I
conversation
wonder
for a whole nother series.
I wonder though if that was like Amber's inner feelings, like not it wasn't about any prophecies or like
Oh yeah, no,
using the
I think that's just
catalyst.
like
It was just like I don't want this
Just
because I experienced it.
oh yeah, no,
yeah.
yeah, 100%. But like, I'm still like, I think that makes me even more like, why are we not dismantling the slave? Because if it's a plot hole,
Yeah.
like that happens. But like, I'm like, this is a character hole, and I'm like, I'm not there. I'm not. You've characterized these people so well. Don't do this to me.
Mm.
But I'm just assuming probably Amber is just like also cares about saving the entire world first, so that's why the fool
Mhm.
went off to Buckkeep. But yeah. Um. Oh yeah, Burge
Speaking of
has
the
some.
Fool,
Oh, go ahead.
Birch and the Fool apparently talk. And it seems like the Fool is much more chatty than Shade or Shrewd even know. And I'm sure
Yeah,
Right.
they
actually,
wouldn't
I
be
feel
very
like
happy that the
everyone
Fool's
assumes they're
jabbing to
special, and then
everybody
the
else.
fool only talks to them. Meanwhile, the fool is
Yeah.
like talking to everyone to get information.
Yes.
Mm.
I also am so nosy. I want to know what the Fool says to Burrich. Like, what do they have to communicate about? Like, what the heck?
Probably like go protect
Honestly,
your boy,
Yeah,
dumbass.
I want to be a fly on that wall.
Mm.
same.
Speaking of which, you know, two characters that I wish actually got to interact: Patience and the Fool. I feel like they would have awesome
Yes.
interactions.
Oh my God, they would be best
We would
friends.
be BFFs. Yeah, no doubt.
The Fool would definitely show Patience all of their like artsy things, and Patience would just gush and swoon and be like, "Look at this! Can you do this for me?" And it would be so freaking cute. And I bet the Fool would get to tattoo Patience because
Oh my
of
god,
how
for
well the
sure.
carvings are and stuff. Like, Patience would demand it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like they would also get along well with Lacey, for sure.
Oh, definitely.
I feel like they'd have good
Lacey would just
banter.
sit there and like admire both of them like chatting away at
Getting
each
along,
other. It
it's
would
like,
be
oh,
so cute.
I'm glad Patience has a friend.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, she's growing up, my girl." So cute.
Hmm. But yeah, speaking of the fool, like one line here which is interesting to me is like Birch is like, "You have a fey mood on you. You sound more like the fool than yourself." And then Fitz is like, "It seems the closer I walk to death, the funnier everything seems." Um, And like I think it probably like doesn't like mean anything much, and I'm just reading very into it. But I like the idea of like the closer Fitz is to like his eventual death, because or like his death, it's like this idea of like because the fool's death is what eventually sets off this kind of like body swap. Like I had this like realization of them as like one person, I guess, or like does that make sense? Where
Mhm.
like we're finally acknowledging like the level of connection they have. So I think that that's like might be something interesting there to look at and see if that's like reflected elsewhere. It could also just be like another nod of like, hey, the fool and Fitz are like pretty similar. But yeah. Also, Birch has like some other like hilarious lines in here, like when August is like, "Oh, Severance and Rout have been poisoned, and he'll have to prepare. Regal will have to prepare himself." And it's like, "Oh, how tragic for him, an untrained
Right.
valet."
Oh my gosh.
And
Line.
like Birch is like, "I've always hated court intrigue. I'd rather clean stalls." And like, I
Mhm.
love Fitz is probably in the background, like, "Me too."
Fucking same.
Yeah. But yeah, so they convince August, or like August comes with this skill message from Verity, and then also to call them to say that Regal's waiting for them in the bats. So they go to meet Regal in the bats, and surprise, it's a fucking trap. Regal like has a cure, then knock Birch out cold, another protection of someone else. Fitz's body is too racked by the poison to stop Regal from torturing him by monologuing at him. Um, Yeah, and this is again like we discussed lots of the monologue earlier, but it's like essentially Regal being like, "Yeah, just fucking do whatever you want, and no one's gonna question you." They,
Hmm.
um, and then as Fitz is almost dying here again in the pools, we've again talked a lot about like skill opening. He like skills out to Verity. Verity slurps up Galen and just kills him right there on the spot, and then uh we get this long thing where it's like, in case you missed it, Galen was Regal's half brother and Queen Desire's bastard.
Yeah.
By the way, which when I first read this book had me going, fucking what? Huh?
Right.
But yeah, now that we've like marked out all of like the little hints, it's like, duh.
I wonder if Verity got in trouble for killing Galen. Because he did not clear that with Shrewd first. Just,
Well, I wonder if he even tells Shrewd. Like,
yeah, he probably doesn't.
he could have just kept it secret and been like, "Oh no, I wonder what happened."
I feel like, see, my thing is, I feel like they definitely know that Galen was involved because I almost feel like that's a reason that Regal gets off so easy is because I feel like,
Blame it on Galen.
yeah, blame it on Galen and probably like framed it as like, oh yeah, my half brother just I just joined in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which like is not an angle I considered, but then that's that's like a potential other reason that Shrewd is so easy on him besides his own biases.
Yeah.
Right. There's a line in the next chapter where it says Verity dismissed Regal's plottings as nasty boyish tricks. It's like, no. Don't.
Wrong again, Verity.
The Farseers are too stupid to live.
It's
Like,
not,
Yeah, it's a wonder that they survive.
mhm.
it's murder. Like, there's a difference, and it's very big.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Regal killed what, 2 people? 3 people? He killed 3 people. And
Yeah.
like Verity's like,
I
"Oh,
was trying to kill.
boys
Like,
will be boys."
several other people died in the wake of it. Like, Cobb is dead now. Galen's dead now. Obviously, they're bad guys, but that's still like deaths because of Regal's treasonous.
Treachery.
Mhm.
Right.
And it's just like I feel like this is like this would make a fantastic skit with like Fitz just being like, he killed several people. It's just like, you know, boys will be boys. Haven't you killed some people in your time? And Fitz is like, I guess, but
All
it
killed
did.
people when we were teens.
Right.
Uh, um, Is there anything else for this chapter?
Yeah, one thing I was like a little confused about is why doesn't Fitz realize that Birch is alive because of the wit? Like, isn't that just something that he would naturally do?
I thought he couldn't really like function because of the poison.
So maybe everything in his body is like survive and it's not
Yeah,
let's
it's
use
not like
all of our
taking
skills.
out other like using the energy to like quest out. Even all the skill stuff he's doing is like for the most part unintentional. I think he doesn't have like control of his faculties enough
Mhm.
to try to use the wit to figure out if Birch is alive.
That makes
Yeah, and even
sense.
pre-poisoning, he was not exactly like tip-top judgment because of the smoke. So I could definitely see it being a thing
Yeah, that's true.
where he's
Yeah.
like not firing on all cylinders / not thinking of all of the options available to him.
Right.
Okay, so the last chapter, which functions kind of like an epilogue, even though there's an actual epilogue, is chapter 24, Aftermath. Um, this basically kind of like is like a where are they now? It catalogs all of like
Hmm.
the fallout of what happens as a result of Regal's plans, and kind of like it like fast forwards a bit to like a neat closing point, but actually the next book starts like a little bit back in the middle of this.
A little
So
before.
yeah, because he talks about returning to Buckkeep and stuff that happens there, but all of that, he's still in Jhaampe at the start of Royal Assassin.
I wonder if the reason it's like that is because Hobb wrote this so that it could be a standalone if it
Yeah.
didn't do well enough to have the
Continue.
publishers allow like it to become a trilogy.
Probably.
Yeah,
Like
like
this was this her literal first published book?
As no,
as Robin Hobb, I think it was,
I
right?
think that she did The Soldier's Son before as Robin Hobb,
Oh,
Okay.
okay. I did not know that. Okay.
because everything else before that was Megan Lindholm.
It's like
Okay.
pretty taboo. Well, not taboo, but like bad move to publish a book that ends on a severe cliffhanger because you'll get a lot of really bad reviews. Um, like I've learned that from the experience I have with like publishing and stuff that apparently if you publish a book, especially like until the next one comes out, people hate cliffhangers and will get like really mad at you and give your book like a 1-star review. So
I
she
mean, I could definitely
probably
see like a
like
like
tie it up.
non-cliffhanger way to do this. Like just like have it be like all this stuff happened. I'm still recovering, but at least the plot on the thing has been
Mhm.
saved. We're still in Jhaampe, which like might have been like more depressing end, but the epilogue of this thing is pretty fucking depressing anyways. So like
Definitely.
could have been done. But yeah, I definitely get the idea of like cliffhanger bad.
And you just don't know like if you're going to be able to continue the story, so you want to make sure that like the reader isn't left wondering about what happened to August or what happened to whoever, because then they're going to be like, all these questions never got answered, so I hate this book and I'm giving it a bad review.
Yeah.
No.
Well, see, they do that, and they're like, "Who's boy? Who is the voice telling me not to carry him leave?"
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I agree. There's like degrees of it where it's like
Right.
resolving stuff that's like mostly internal rather than like this overarching thing that we're hearing about. Um, but yeah, I wish August wasn't like written out of the story. It feels like he had like so much more to potential. Like I say this about like every other character, but like yeah. Do we get like hints of him because it says he moves away to Withywoods, and I don't remember if there's like references to him in Fitz and the Fool.
I don't remember, but I think it's because I just don't care about him at all.
I thought he like died. I thought he
And he had like
Well,
no
died
impact
like
on the upkeep of Withywood. Fucking hell, this poor
I
guy.
had the impression that for some reason, until I reread this, that his like what Verity did to him like scrambled his brains, that he was basically like disabled afterwards. But the end of this book doesn't give that impression, so I don't know if like I was wrong or if we get more information later that I just don't remember. I thought he was like kind of like a shell of himself.
Fitz definitely gives that impression when he redescribes it later on. So like I don't think that's
That was
yeah.
not incorrect. And it might just be that Fitz has more information at that point. Because the end of this book makes it seem like August intentionally removed himself from like the court life because of this experience. But it could just be that that's what Fitz thought at this point, and then later on he finds out that he was like damaged.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys think the golden skinned being that they mention in the intro is a dragon?
I think it's definitely an elderling.
Mhm.
Like a real elderling, not like
An
the
actual elderling?
farcier views
Yeah.
of elderlings.
It's really interesting that Hobb chose that as kind of like the final chapter intro. Like the choice of chapter intros
Mhm.
for like chapter 23 and 24 are like so like they're so disconnected from what is happening almost, but they're so like portentous. They're like, oh shit, mate, like there's something like going on here. Um
Mm-hmm.
I also kind of saw the description, the golden skin being, and then the like dark, like stumpy man or whatever. I kind of saw that as like Fitz and the Fool in Tawny Man. And like the epilogue is with Fitz and the Fool or with Fitz in Tawny Man. So like it
Right.
could have been like a prophecy from another um like white prophet
Yeah,
viewing
I
like
didn't even
like
think of that.
expecting
especially since,
Fitz and the
like
Fool
this
to
could have been
come.
like misinterpreted through the lens of like
Mhm.
be- because like
The
650
artist or
definitely has
something.
this thing of like fucking weird ass thing, probably an elderling.
Right.
Hey, do you guys have any theories about why like the ring and arrowhead were chosen as gifts for Fitz out of the stuff? Like I was thinking it might have something to do with like Drew's relationship with chivalry, but I couldn't remember if there was anything that was like established that would like
Well, I also
lend credence
wonder
to
if
that.
like if the arrowhead is kind of to remind Fitz to like be careful with death and stuff because I'm sure Eode knows that he's the assassin, but
Oh wait,
obviously it's like not like he killed him.
yeah, and it's also like probably be careful who you trust because um I remembered that uh Regal reported to Shrewd that Rurik was an invalid because of an arrow wound that he took. So
Hmm.
they I completely forgot that. But then like yeah, it's probably that like the arrowhead was like that's the same arrowhead he actually did have that injury, but it wasn't as bad as Regal made it out to be.
And
Mhm.
I bet the ring is kind of to remind Fitz of his commitment to like Ketrican and to Rurik and how like he could have had such a strong connection with Rurik, and then to remind him, like, take care of Ketrican, make sure this doesn't happen again with my daughter.
Hmm. Okay. Do we have anything else in the body of this chapter, or can we move into the final little paragraph?
Um, I don't have anything until like literally the last
Yeah,
line.
you want to read that one?
Sure. So it's very, this is the only time I teared up in this book, on this read, was this last part. But it's of one other I must speak, one dragged into that conflict and intrigue only by his loyalty to me. To the end of my days, I will bear the scars he gave me. His worn teeth sank deeply into my hand several times before he managed to drag me from that pool. How he did it, I will never know, but his head still rested on my chest when they found it. His mortal bonds to this world had broken.
Oh my god, I
Nosy
know.
rescued him from the pool.
Saved his life. And I
So,
think that
uh,
when I think we can even pinpoint the moment that Nosy dies is when Fitz is skilling to Verity and he talks about his mortal bonds being broken, but it's not his, it's Nosy's.
Yeah, and I was thinking that like also probably the Fitz is like, I had all this skill strength and I don't know from where, and it's like probably not his own because
From
he's so worn
Nosy.
out. It's from Nosy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god, my freaking heart.
It's just so, it's such a
Cobb is actually. I remember when I read this. I still feel this way, but I read this book for the first time. I can't believe this motherfucker killed a dog, killed another dog. Went, haha,
Brought
no, actually, I
one
didn't
dog
kill the
back
first
to life.
Yeah,
just to
just to
kill
kill it again.
Oh my god, I know.
I have the like anniversary edition with the paintings in it, and like the last page in the book is a painting of Fitz laying on the bath floor with like Nosy's head resting on his chest.
Oh my fucking god, I would cry.
Why?
I know. I
Just
won't.
punch us in the gut, why don't you?
Yeah, have you guys seen
Go
those?
get it. No,
Oh,
I
yeah, yeah,
haven't.
yeah.
I'm gonna go grab it so I can show you because it's so good.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh, is this another? I think Magali Villeneuve is the person who did like all of the illustrations for the illustrated edition.
Mhm.
Yeah, which like I guess while Leah's getting the book, I'm a big fan of. I was like a big fan of like Magali Villeneuve because she does art for Magic the Gathering. And
Mhm.
so I was like, wait. I usually when like people just announce artists, I don't recognize the name, and I'm like, wait, I know this artist. I actually want to get this because I think this artist is cool as hell. Um,
I bought all three of them because I like pictures. So, but this is the. I know it's kind of glossy.
Oh
oh my
my
god! Okay,
god.
that's actually so much. I didn't even think it would be that perspective. That's so much sadder. What the
That's
No.
so sad. I hate that. I
So
hate that so
sad.
much. I love it because it's beautiful, but I fucking hate that that's the last thing. Like,
No, it's
that
not
just makes
even
me
like
cry.
It's like
the book
after
ends
the
like here. It's like after the epilogue. This is like the
oh, yeah, they
final.
give you like one last little gut punch, huh?
I
By the way,
know.
no, he's still dead.
It's so sad.
Oh my god.
It's so good.
Mhm. Yeah, speaking of sad, we have one little epilogue that's like less than a page. Um, we essentially return to the more aged Fitz, the Fitz at the time of the Tawny Man trilogy, who's like writing all of this. He's kind of um, like drugged out or tired out, and he's just like he in like a very maudlin mood, just like at the start of the book, and he's like thinking about various like scenes that we'll see later in Royal Assassin of the red ships. Um, and he references the boy, obviously Hap, but we don't know him as that yet. But who's like, dude, you need to stop writing, chill out. Um,
Mhm.
and then as Fitz starts to like kind of like spiral mentally, he's like thinking, will I ever ask him to bring me 3 leaves of the Carium, which is what Ketrican tries to poison him with here. And then a friend says no, and it's like, that's Night Eyes.
Mhm.
That's our boy.
That's your boy.
I love
If
that that was used somewhere. A friend says softly no, because it mimics the way that Smithy called him back from like wanting to jump over the wall. So it's connecting these two characters. Like I never really
Keeping
put
Fitz alive.
I never made the connection like on previous reads, but calling them like a friend and they're just saying no. And it's like Night Eyes is basically just Smithy on like steroids.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Just much
Yeah,
bigger
it's much bigger and
Right.
more lovable. Ah,
and lasts for a little
Yeah.
bit longer.
mhm.
Yeah. My
Just a little
favorite
bit.
is when Night Eyes just calls Fitz on his bullshit. Like there's one part where he just says like I'm being stupid and Night Eyes is like what's new or something to the effect. And I remember I thought like I don't remember what book it happens in, but I thought it was so funny that I like tweeted it because I was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever read. This dog calling this person stupid or this wolf.
Mhm. That definitely sounds like first book Tawny Man, Night Eyes. Like,
Yeah.
The sass is real.
hmm
Night Eyes has been with Fitz long enough that he's like, I can't take your like bullshit anymore. You gotta just calm down. You're being dramatic.
Exactly.
Night Eyes is definitely the friend that knows you better than you know yourself, and it's like, Doug, I
afraid.
love you, so like I'm not gonna press too hard on this, but like get a job.
Yeah.
That's literally Night Eyes at the start of Tani Man, who's like,
Yeah.
I love hanging with you, but like you're
You need
obviously
a life,
unfulfilled.
bro.
Yeah, like maybe you should pick up a hobby. Like I hear crocheting is pretty good this time of the year.
Yeah.
Like something like mhm. But yeah, Night Eyes is sick. We're super excited to check him out in the next book, Royal Assassin, because we fucking
Woohoo!
finished Assassin's
We're
Apprentice.
Oh
finished.
my
Let's
god,
go.
we did it! I'm sad, but so excited, but also still
Yeah.
very sad.
I think Royal Assassin is my favorite of this trilogy. I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, Royal Assassin is definitely the most like action packed of the three. I think that
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
yeah. So our schedule is going to be a little bit different. The Thursday of the week that you're seeing this, which is going to be, let me check the exact date.
28th.
Yeah, the 28th, Thursday the 28th of October, we're going to be doing a live show to celebrate finishing off the book. We're going to be having a spoiler-free section, so nothing but Assassin's Apprentice for the first like 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how long we have stuff to discuss. And then the rest of the show will just be kind of a spoilers all retrospective of the book as a whole before we move into Royal Assassin. And also, there won't be a regular episode
The week
next, I believe.
after.
Yeah, the week after. So we'll be taking after they think of the live show as like the episode for that week, and then we'll be taking a week off before coming back with Royal Assassin. But yeah,
Please join us on the live show if you have anything that you want to chat about
yeah. Oh, we should say the
Rob and
specific
Hobb.
time.
Like,
Specific time. It's
yes.
Thursday, October 28th, 5 p.m. CST. So, uh, yeah, and it'll be on YouTube Live. So yeah, and yeah, bring us any questions, thoughts. I've been loving like some of the comments. Like I remember there's one comment where someone was like pointing out how there's a parallel within the chapter, one of the early chapters where like um Fitz learns his real name from his mother in because he hears it from when she calls him Kepit. And then he walks off with Molly and then gives Molly her real name by reading out the tablets in the
Yes, I
channel.
loved that because
Yeah, and like
none of
I
us had
did pick up
noticed
on
that.
that.
It like completely slipped my mind. Like I didn't see that at all, so I loved that comment.
Yeah, so they
These are on our YouTube, right? So if anyone wants to
yeah.
leave comments for us or talk to us, I think the best way to do it is either like our
Yeah, we have
Instagram or
Instagram. We have an Instagram, a Twitter, and YouTube comments. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, feel free to reach out to us on any of those platforms. The link is going to be in the description of whatever thing you're using. We have a link tree, um, and you can just like tweet us questions, comments, or ask us for our thoughts on specific like stuff that you noticed or stuff that you like think is interesting. But yeah, do you guys have anything else to say?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think
Okay,
so.
so thanks y'all for watching. Thanks for sticking with us for a whole last book. We got
We
15
did
more.
it!
Hope you stick with us, and we'll see you on Thursday for the live show. Until then,
Woohoo!
see ya.
Bye.